plate, something was heard coming up the marble stairs. Splish, splash, splish, splash. And when it arrived at the top, it knocked at the door, and a voice said, "Open the door, thou youngest daughter of the king." So she rose and went to see who it was that called her. But when she opened the door and caught sight of the frog, she shut it again with great vehemence, and sat down at the table looking very pale. But the king perceived that her heart was beating violently, and asked her whether it were a giant who had come to fetch her away, who stood at the door. "Oh, no," answered she, "it is no giant, but an ugly frog." "What does the frog want with you?" said the king. "Oh, dear father, when I was sitting yesterday playing by the fountain, my golden ball fell into the water, and this frog fetched it up again because I cried so much. But first I must tell you, he pressed me so much that I promised him he should be my companion. I never thought he would come out of the water, but somehow he has jumped out, and now he wants to come in here." At that moment there was another knock, and a voice said, "King's daughter, youngest, open the door. Hast thou forgotten thy promises made at the fountain so clear, 'neath the lime tree's shade? King's daughter, youngest, open the door." Then the king said, "What you have promised, that you must perform. Go and let him in." So the king's daughter went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in after her right up to her chair, and as soon as she was seated, the frog said, "Take me up." But she hesitated so long that at last the king ordered her to obey. And soon as the frog sat on the chair, he jumped onto the table and said, "Now push thy plate near me, that we may eat together." And she did so, but everyone saw very unwillingly. The frog seemed to relish his dinner much, but every bit that the king's daughter ate nearly choked her, till at last the frog said, "I have satisfied my hunger and feel very tired. Wilt thou carry me upstairs now into thy chamber, and make thy bed ready, that we may sleep together?" At this speech the king's daughter began to cry, for she was afraid of the cold frog, and dared not touch him, and besides, he actually wanted to sleep in her own beautiful clean bed. But her tears only made the king very angry, and he said, "He who helped you in the time of your trouble must not now be despised." So she took the frog up with 2 fingers and put him in a corner of her chamber. But as she lay in her bed, he crept up to it and said, "I am so very tired that I shall sleep well. Do take me up, or I shall tell your father." This speech put the king's daughter in a terrible passion, and catching the frog up, she threw him with all her strength against the wall, saying, "Now will you be quiet, you ugly frog?" But as he fell, he was changed from a frog into a handsome prince with beautiful eyes, who after a little while became, with her father's consent, her dear companion and betrothed. Then he told her how he had been transformed by an evil witch, and that no one but herself could have had the power to take him out of the fountain, and that on the morrow they would go together into his own kingdom. The next morning, as soon as the sun rose, a carriage drawn by 8 white horses, with ostrich feathers on their heads and golden bridles, drove up to the door of the palace.